Hi guys, Overarch here, and today I'm going to talk about what you can expect from the Necrons in Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2. So we don't yet have many details about how this faction is actually going to play. However, we do know that the previous factions were converted from their tabletop versions very, very closely. So it's safe to say that the Necrons are also going to be converted from the tabletop to Battlefleet Gothic Armada pretty closely, if not, 1-to-1. So let's talk about how the Necrons play on the tabletop, and that's going to give us a good idea of how they're going to play in Armada. So first of all, you have to understand that Necron ships can be described as quality over quantity. They are extremely powerful, and they're able to compete against ships that are a class above them from other factions. For example, a Necron cruiser could go toe-to-toe with an Imperial battle cruiser, and while it might not be quite even, it's going to be pretty close. They're the most technologically advanced race in the galaxy, by far, although the Eldar do give them a run for their money. However, the Eldar's technology developed with the crutch of psychic powers, whereas the Necrons are just pure technology, so they're far more advanced. So let's talk about their weapons a little bit. One of the first weapons they have is the Particle Whip. So this is the same type of weapon that they mount on their monoliths, if you're familiar with their 40k tabletop setting, and they're equivalent to like a tank/Necron APC. This is probably going to be their most basic weapons class. It has medium range and good damage. The next weapon is going to be the Lightning Arc. This is a unique weapon in that it could target multiple ships within its firing arc. It has medium range and is very accurate. In fact, it even ignores hollow fields. So how I expect this to work in-game is that it might be able to chain to different targets. So if you have a couple ships clustered together, it can chain between all of them and hit all of them. This is similar to how the Necron's lightning weapons, Tesla weapons, work on the 40k tabletop as well. Next we have the Sepulture. So this is a short-range terror weapon that is only mounted on their largest ships, and it could actually drive a crew insane and make them damage their own ship. So I suspect this is probably going to be able to cause a mutiny on the targeted ship, if I, were to guess. We'll see how powerful that is, though, because that's a pretty powerful ability. I expect it's probably only going to be able to mount on their battleship. Next is the Gars Particle Whip. So this is the longest range weapon they have. It's similar to a lance, but also has a chance to bypass shields. So meaning it can directly damage the enemy's hull, as it bypasses both shields and armor. If they give this thing a decent crit chance, I could see this being really nasty, as it would just bypass both your shields and their armor, and really mess things up. Next is the Star Pulse Generator. This is a short-range AoE pulse that will most likely damage enemies and shove them away. This is the get back, you don't know me like that weapon. And it'd be interesting to see if you can build a fleet around this. Next we have portals. So portals enhance Necron lightning strikes. It's basically their version of a teleporter. I expect this to probably be either an add-on or maybe a favor they could get to kind of give them a longer range or more powerful lightning strike. So that's kind of their weapons. I expect that we're going to see a lot more weapons as well that are restricted to either upgrades or favors. And the Necron lore is basically limitless with all kinds of crazy arcane weaponry that they have at their disposal. So basically anything they mount on their ship is going to be within the lore. The devs have a lot of material to draw on here. So next let's talk about their actual ships. First of all Necron ships are constructed of living metal, which gives them the ability to regenerate light damage on the battlefield or severe damage outside of it. On the tabletop, Necron warriors are literally able to pull themselves back together after being cut in half and disassembled and absolutely maimed. So I expect you to be able to upgrade your ship's repair capabilities quite a lot. In fact, they're the only faction on the tabletop that can just straight up negate a hit against their hull. Not reduce it through armor, just outright negate it. And this ranges from their smaller ships, which have a 1 in 3 chance to ignore a hit, to their battleships that have a 1 in 2 chance to ignore the hit. And yes, that did apply against lance weapons, so it's just a straight up better version of armor. So speaking of their battleship, they also have the most feared ship in the entire game, the Karn-class battleship, which can take on a small fleet and come out on top. It's going to be interesting to see how they translate that to the game, as one super powerful ship is going to be quite a pain to bring down. Your next thought is probably, how are they going to balance these guys? They're going to have to be like slow or something, right? And it's the only way to balance them, right? Well, you're wrong. At least in a straight line, they can outrun every other faction in the game, including the Eldar. Still, I wouldn't want to get into a turning fight with the Eldar. You should never get into a turning fight with the Eldar, but in a straight line, they could absolutely run down anybody. And now let's talk about their Achilles Heel. Their retreat if they lose too many units. So rather than throwing their men into a meat grinder, they're just instantly phase out of reality. In the tabletop, this is represented by them giving more victory points to their opponent than they actually cost, meaning each loss for them is significantly worse than it was for the other factions. This will be interesting to see how this works out in Gothic Armada, as the game has no real victory point conditions. It's mainly more victory conditions, victory objectives. So the lore, at least in the regular old Warhammer 40k, has moved past this point, with the Necrons having their total lore reworked from the Battlefleet Gothic days. And the setting for this game is in that new, more up-to-date lore. So this is a perfect excuse for them to just ignore this bit and give them some other weakness, like just making their ships really expensive, which I kind of suspect they'll do anyway. The last time that the Necrons had the phase-out rule in Tabletop 40k was, I believe, 4th edition, and the game's currently in, I want to say, 8th edition. So it's been a very, very long time, 10 or 15 years, since they've had that phase-out rule. Like I said, though, Battlefleet Gothic is quite an old game. So it's going to be interesting to see how they implement this rule, or if they even do at all. One possible way they could do it is that instead of having mutinies, they just make their retreat automatic and instant. So if your morale's broken, you just warp out. And that'd be an interesting way to balance it. You couldn't override the mutiny or anything like that. Well, guys, as always, I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and if you like it, let me know. If you don't, also let me know. If you have any questions about the Necrons, or you want to make any comments about the Necrons, feel free to do so in the comment section below, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.